Hello there, this is Denzian, and today I'm looking at this Dark Future, the game of Highway Warriors, which is apparently a 3D role playing game. Not sure about that, by the late Richard Halliwell. Now, my experience of this game, very old Games Workshop game, comes from picking up a copy of White Dwarf. Ooh, what issue must it have been? Early hundreds, I think. Very could have been issue 100, 102 or something like that, where they first advertised Dark Future. I was probably about 11 years old. And there was a competition to win a copy of this game, which I entered. I didn't win, but I did get through the post a letter, which I have still to this day. Here it is. And it's written from the perspective of Red Harvest, who has signed it, who is one of the sanctioned operatives, one of the bounty hunter type operatives who drove around the wastelands bringing justice to the roads. And so a sort of in-game letter, a bit weird. As you can say, being somebody of obvious intelligence, ha ha ha, you already know that you have answered all the questions in our Dark Future competition correctly. Unfortunately, your entry wasn't one of the 50 winners pulled out of the hat, trough actually, by the mail order trolls. But you're one of the lucky runners-up who are fortunate enough to receive the enclosed £5 off voucher. This £5 off voucher is only sanctioned for use against the new fuel-injected Dark Future game. It can be redeemed through an undercover operatives at Games Workshop, mail order, or one of our Games Workshop game stores / gasoline stations. Well, what are you waiting for? Power up your engine, drive out, and get it immediately. But drive carefully. Red Harvest. And I got a little card voucher, £5. This game retailed for £20 when it came out in the late 80s. I did pick it up for £15, lucky me, and still have it today. Bit battered, as you can see. It's been around the block a few times, and I think this came out after Blood Bowl came out in this sort of size box, where they sort of doubled the size of their old little board game boxes to this bigger size. I think it's about double the size of those old boxes. So I think Blood Bowl came out first, if I remember correctly, followed by Dark Future. So unusual because, of course, it's not a Warhammer related game. I don't know if this was the last of the non-Warhammer games. I think it probably was, certainly of this scale anyway. It's the only one you're going to get. And I was taken in by the fluff. I thought it was a great futuristic, I say futuristic, it was set in the 90s, world. Not quite Mad Max. Obviously, it's a driving car game, so you think of Mad Max. But you still had civilization. But then outside the walls, you had the no-go areas where the gangs roamed and fuel tankers were raided. There was still a bit of law and order, but it was on the edge. Corporations are there. So it's very cyberpunk, really, I felt. Cyberpunk mixed with a bit of Mad Max. But yeah, set in the 1990s, late 1990s, I think between 95 and 97, because 97 was always the year, wasn't it? You know, Escape from New York was in 1997. But I think this game came out about 1987, so only about 10 years before. Or was it 88? I'm sure the back would tell us. Let's just flip it over. Ooh, spin it round. There we go. Lovely bit of artwork there. We get a bit of blurb about what the game's about, the contents, photograph of said contents, sophisticated flash-paying game system, interchangeable weapons, detailed models, 4 bikes and 4 cars, counters, over 12 feet of hard-wearing full-colour highway. Game details there, 2 or more players, got to be 15 for this, oh dear, I was too young, and half an hour and up. Yes, 1988, there we go, 1988 this came out. Yeah, I was too young for this game. I was, like I say, about 11 years old, and I really didn't get the rules. I was not the brightest spark at 11 years of age, and I really didn't get a lot of the rules. I loved the fluff, I loved the minis, but the rules were far too complicated for me. As it should have been. Nothing wrong with that. So it took me a long time to get into this game as a playable game. I took the cars out, as you can see, so when I flipped the box over, they didn't get crunched up. So I just took the lid off. Les Edwards, I think, did the artwork, if I remember correctly. I had this as a poster on my wall, which came free with a White Dwarf. Lovely bit of artwork. You can still see the city in the background, so there's definitely civilization out there. Souped up cars versus homebrew vehicles. So inside, the rules I've taken out, but what we actually have is our lovely spinny template. So when you go skidding around, you can go in different directions, of course. You might flip over, and you put that over your vehicle as you drive down the road. If you lose control, that's the worst that can happen, really. Range rulers, they love a good range ruler, don't they? GW, these little plastic ones back in the day, like throwing the football in Blood Bowl. And here we have old Batman style, kaboom, kabash, daka, daka, daka. Should have it that way around, daka, daka, daka. So measuring the range of your weapons, because you could be driving around corners, so it wasn't always a straight line, you needed to see. The board was made up of card sections of highway. So unlike, say, in the modern day Gaslands, which is free roaming on a tabletop, this was a board game. Various scenarios usually involve some sort of race, taking down the baddies and so on, driving around the highways. And in the scenarios in the game, it would tell you what to lay out, but there was a random generation system, so you could keep going, and then you take off cards from the back, put them at the front, and you'd roll randomly to see what was up next. Is it a curve? Is it a straight? We have 2 different degrees of curvature, one more severe than another, and you can just make out the actual board sections. So if I pick up a car, whoop, there we go, there's a car, there's a Renegade. You can see how that would occupy that section, and then you would move forward. And you could do maneuvers such as sort of stray across, and you go like that. The rules for movement were very complicated for me, as I say. Easy now. Very similar to Gaslands today, really, thinking about it, but on a board. So we have the curvatures, we have straight sections, 8 pieces of straight. Now, I actually have, strangely enough, over here you can probably see even more. These come from the fact I actually had 2 sets of this game. I don't know how that happened. Somebody at school was getting rid of a copy. I got his second copy. I kept the board pieces, but I don't know what I did with the box. Maybe I chucked it. But for some reason, I've got double the amount of board, which is great. I don't think I'd ever get a chance to use it because I don't think I'd have enough floor space. This was a very difficult game to play on a table because you could just keep going long. So as it says, 8 foot of tracks, you know, who's got an 8-foot table? So it wasn't always very practical. So the floor was usually better than a table. If you were playing the random track generation system, you could roll up things that appear on the highway. So you've got sandbanks, sand dunes that are blown in. We've got various detritus here, bits of rubble, a bit of wrecks, hazards to avoid, a railway line. So if you're really unlucky, the train comes whizzing over that just as you pass over it, and you get squished. Craters, wrecked cars, bag of spare weapons, still have. Oil slicks that you can drop out the back. I am missing, I don't know why, the mines. You could drop mines out the back of your car, and they'd all be upside down, so you didn't know until you drove over it if it was a dummy mine or a real mine, which I thought was really funny. But for some reason, I can't find the counters, so I'll have to get a proxy for that. Easily done, I suppose. I have to sort that. The game came with 4 plastic bikes. Rather horrifically painted, but never mind. 1 piece plastic. Same scale as all your little Matchbox cars, which we would have here in the UK, or your Hot Wheels, I suppose now you'd call them. It came with 2 interceptors, who are meant to be, I guess, the good guys. Dubious, really. This has been converted with some weapons not from original Dark Future. These are actually from Gaslands that have been added to it, as I've, in a more modern age, sort of souped them up a little bit. So 2 different sanctioned operatives, as they were called, or ops. These have been probably painted over about 6 times. I mean, look at the state of them. Pretty horrific. But I've been painting today, as you can see. Not this. You've noticed the same colour. This was painted decades ago. I have improved, honest. Put them away. And then we have the Renegades, the Renegade cars. Here they are. These are the baddies, or the gangs, the outlaws. They do have some genuine Dark Future weaponry still attached. And a few little conversion pieces that have added to it. Yeah, a bit broken. But it didn't really matter with the Renegades. They were meant to be smashed up and broken. The guy was a metal. He was added to it. I think he was part of the original Dark Future range of figures. I have 2 other Renegades here. Both seen better days. Really heavily converted. There's a few Warhammer add-ons there, I think. By spiky bits and flamethrower sections there for extra fuel intake. But again, original metal minis put inside. I think done by the Perrys. They did all the miniatures for that. Flicking through the rulebook. Now, the rulebook is in a folder. It didn't come in a folder. But back in the day, as with Advanced Hero Crest and Adeptus Titanicus and the like, you were sort of encouraged to sort of rip out articles out of White Dwarf and stick them in ring binders, and I did that, much to my shame. And I also did it with the rule books, so now I keep them nice and safe in here. Another lovely bit of artwork. Any Fighting Fantasy fans might recognise that from Freeway Fighter. Lovely bit of artwork. Components lists, but I think this shows its age because the way it was laid out was very confusing. I mean, you go straight into a map of the USA as it is in 1995. There we go, 1995. Great central desert there. Most of the places all dried up and become desert. And how people are fighting over resources and so on. Great artwork though. Carl Critchlow, for the Barbarian fame, did a lot of the artwork because he loved bikes and cars. So he did a lot of the artwork in here. But the rules are very, I don't know, not laid out very well. They're very sporadic, it seems, because you've got all this fluff, and then it'll go, here's a turn sequence, and here's a bit more fluff. This is how you move. So it wasn't, you had to look for things, especially when it comes to fluff. I wish the fluff had been a bit more thought about in the way that was given to us. It's a very odd layout. You might like it, but I didn't. And the turns were split into phases, so again you can see how the vehicles would move along the board. So you'd have 6 phases in a turn, and depending on how fast you were going in miles per hour, would say if you could move that turn or not. So the faster you go, the more moves you get, basically. And that was simple enough, really. But you had to keep track of how quick you were going. And then, as you can see, can you move on this phase or not? Yes or no. So you'd move around the grid. And if you wanted to maneuver, like drift across, you'd usually have to do a roll to see if you could lose control. You know, you could do U-turns. Then you could accelerate, you could brake. There's Red Harvest, who wrote me my letter. Very nice of her. Braking, slowing down, reversing, ramming cars ahead of you. Because obviously if you're going quicker than the car in front of you, you are going to catch up with it and collide with it. More fluff. The no-go zones. Shooting, there we go. Pop, pop, pop. Lots of different weaponry on your vehicles. So every vehicle you could kit out with whatever you wanted. You have a monetary value to spend on your vehicle. And there was only so much weight a vehicle could take as well. So you couldn't just deck it out with whatever you wanted. There was a limit. So you could have missile launchers. You could have high-tech lasers if you're a sanctioned op. And obviously you could take a lot of damage. And you could end up spinning around and flying all over the place, becoming a bit of an obstacle yourself. Oil slicks, mines, smoke bombs. That's the other counter I'm missing, isn't it? The smoke. Where's my smoke counters? Dropping spikes. Pop those tyres. And another thing of its age, I think, is the critical hits, which are great, because everyone likes a good table. Like injury tables in role-playing games. In this, you know, you hit the front of the vehicle, you're going head-on. What do you hit? Blow up the wheels, the weapons, the engine, the driver, the bodywork. You know, so if you hit the side, floor facing, rear facing, roof facing, what do you actually hit? And then we have critical hits. So if you hit the driver, what happens if the driver gets knocked down? The wheels, the engine goes up, and so on. So that's lovely. I like that. Same with hazards. So if you hit a hazard, you get rammed. Do you lose control? Where do you end up? Crashing, careening down the street. So the book goes on and on. There's loads of maneuvers. You know, control loss, skidding, what happens when you're skidding. And scattered amongst all these rules, you've got little bits of fluff again about particular characters and stories. The sanctioned operatives, the agencies they work for. Rams and crashes. It just goes on and on. And this, like I say, it's a lot considering it's a board game. You know, I'd expect all these maneuvers to be in a tabletop game like Gaslands, but it's a lot for a board game. Crashing. Then we get some more fluff for the renegades. Types of gangs. And then we get to the bikes. So bikes have their own version of the rules. You know, there's only certain things they can do compared to cars. So the way they operate on the board is different. They sort of straddle the line. So shooting again for bikes. Their damage charts. And their hazard rolls. And they added things for in White Dwarf magazine for vehicles like trikes and sidecar motorbikes. So they had their own set of charts and rules as well. Track generation. There we go. So you set up 3 sections of track to start off with, add a curve, and then you could roll to see which direction the curve goes. Is it a severe curve? Is it a small of a wider curve? And then as you move along, you can take that away from the back. You roll to see what appears at the front. And there's always, I think, if I remember correctly, 3 board pieces behind you and sort of 3 ahead of you as you move along. And you can just keep going. I guess the trick is if you turn around and start going back on yourself, you've got to remember what the board was. And then as you go on to each new section, you can roll to see what random things might be on there, such as the debris, barricades, things to avoid. So then we get to vehicle design. So yes, cost of a bike, a renegade or an interceptor, cost of weaponry and the weight. How much weight can you have? There's your payload. How much weight does each vehicle take? And then you can buy what you want. And there are a number of locations, which you can see here, where you can place weaponry. Passive things like mines, spikes, and so on at the back. But these little details are great though, you know, so looking at vehicles, cutaways, really well detailed. Each individual weapon, so we've got grenade launchers of different sizes as well, 20mm there, and lightweight weapons, so they're both the same. Medium weapon, light weapon, both 20mm. Shots 4, shots 10. Oh, okay, so that one does more. Ah, these are for motorcycles. Ah, I see, so that has less shots. And then some scenarios. So first one is a simple race. Really difficult though if you're the lead car to shoot the car behind you and still win the race. You know, you're sort of dodging, dropping mines behind you to try and win. And I think that was the problem with this game. It was the scenarios were a bit limited, I found. This one's random. You can roll up, see what each car has. So each scenario gives you how much money you got to spend on your vehicle. Do the continuous track generation. And kick off. Now, something I used to do, that's the end of the original rulebook. Here we've got lots of articles from White Dwarf. I always used to do this when I was a kid. I used to colour in on the black and white imagery the ones I had. As a sort of, oh, I'll paint him this colour. And there's a policeman, he's blue, isn't he? Yeah, blue. I don't know why he's got pink shoes, but never mind. So I'd colour in the ones that I had as a sort of tick sheet, which is quite funny looking back on it now. And I've got quite a few articles here. This was the campaign rules, which went really deep on how to do continuous gameplay. So you had night driving, survival, hostile environments, so you're driving through radiation zones and all sorts of stuff. Salvaging equipment after games. Did you die during the game? Going mental. Blimey, getting paid. Getting disorders, mental disorders. Gosh. How much media visibility do you get? Kudos points to spend. The price of fame. Someone tries to kill you. Oh, gosh. TV appearances. Rolling on the media table to see if you get any extra advertising funding. Re-equipment, recruitment. Getting cybernetics. Hacking away. So yeah, very cyberpunk. And having a game master. So that's, if you want to go real deep, I never did it, but the rules are there. So yes, free-wheeled vehicles. So Street Fighter. So doing games with pedestrians, getting out your car and actually shooting each other. Now I do have the minis to do that. Not many, just a handful. Some of the sanctioned ops. A couple of cops. There's a dead one there. Cultists running around with minigun. Lovely. Gaslands do similar thing. North Star, they've done a few minis of this scale for Gaslands, and you could quite easily use them for Dark Future. There's a Chainsaw Warrior there from another GW game. There's a sanctioned op running around. I have a few spare plastic bikes as well, and a couple of bikes with sidecars and metal bikes with a bit more detail on them, which I got later on and still have today. And then I have a number of, I guess, shop-bought Hot Wheels type cars that I've souped up. One of them, this police car, I've had for years and years and years. He's got one of the metal original Perry police gun turrets on top, copying one that I saw in a White Dwarf, which I'll show you in a moment. So these have all been done for Gaslands, but when it comes to Gaslands as a more modern game, I've kind of stuck to the Dark Future aesthetic. So this allows you to play games of the pedestrians just shooting. You know, you could do an actual skirmish game around a little city street and have guys shooting away at each other. A few articles from one of their supplements they did. Advanced maneuvers and shooting, goes on and on. Swerves. This is an article with some pre-generated cars, so you could just get a profile from in there here and just use them instead of designing your own. Very useful. Tournament rules, which is different to the long campaign rules we saw earlier. Racing games. So completely different style of doing it. Look at these old orcs from an article. Classic. Anyway, different vehicles. Tank-like vehicles, ironclads, classic cars. So they did expand it. Sports cars, dragsters. Oh look, coming soon. Adeptus Titanicus. Will it be any good? Who knows. So yeah, you could do a whole race. Do a wacky races. Drag racing. Then they had an article here where they have an interview with Red Harvest. Bit of in-world fluff. Her various cars. This is the original article that hooked me in. That appeared in White Dwarf, advertising the system just before it came out. And I think I read this article a dozen times. And some great colour schemes there. And then old heavy metal articles. There's that police car. There we go. What you can do with shop-bought cars. This is probably what inspired me to wreck my plastic kits. All sorts of stuff you can do. Bit about artwork from Carl Critchlow. All about him. Yeah, and then have all my spare sheets telling me what I can have on my car, where you can keep track of your stats as you drive along. So yeah, there's the rules. Blimey, it's a lot, isn't it? It's great though, in a way, if I didn't have that system of cutting up my magazines, I would not have those articles anymore, because I certainly don't have the magazines. So maybe it was a good thing that they all got put in the box and saved. But I never really got into it. It's such a shame. It's such a detailed game, and a forgotten game from Games Workshop, really. It's a shame. I'd like to revisit it, but has it been superseded by Gaslands? Would people rather play Gaslands than a board game? I don't know. Let's see what else was around at the time. That was a great thing about the side of the box, wasn't it? Still got, never had, still got, haven't got any more. Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, a couple of the add-ons here. Yeah, all those classic add-ons. Dungeon Quest. Yeah, someone mentioned that the other day to me. So yeah, Dungeon Quest. That was their other dungeon crawler before Hero Quest came along. So that's the 2 add-ons for that. There is Dungeon Quest. Still have, never had, still have, have. Yeah, so there's the Blood Bowl edition. So yes, that came out before this Dark Future. And then the Talisman. Still around in various ways, isn't it? Blood Royale. Never played that. And then an edition for Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay. So there's a lot there, isn't there? But yeah, anyway, that's Dark Future. Game of Highway Warriors. I got it because I had a £5 off voucher. Played it a couple of times in the last 30 years. Not much. Maybe I should have another go if I can find the floor space for it. So yeah, Dark Future. Classic game. I think it's still worth another go. I'm certainly never going to get rid of it, that's for sure. So, I don't know if you ever had Dark Future. Is it one of those games you missed out on? Let me know. Should I do anything with it? What would you do if you had it still? Would you just use the minis for Gaslands, or use your Gasland minis for Dark Future? Anyway, that's that for today, and I shall see you later. Bye-bye.